Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're all about getting you up to speed on history's heavy hitters, and today, well, we're going straight to the top. George Washington, the name pretty much is the American origin story, right?
Yeah.
First president, founding father, the whole shebang.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we all know the face on the dollar bill, the stoic general leading the charge. But, what made this guy tick? How did he go from surveyor to, well, the symbol of a brand new nation?
Exactly. And that's what we're going to dig into today. His early days, his battles in the French and Indian War, how that all kind of prepped him for the big leagues. And then, of course, there's the whole revolution thing. Commander-in-chief leading a ragtag army against the biggest empire on the planet. Talk about pressure.
Oh, and we can't forget about, actually creating the government after they won. The Constitutional Convention, his 2 terms as president, and the precedents he set, man, those still echo today. And then there's the personal side. His views on slavery, religion, kind of complicated and super important to understanding the whole picture.
Right, so much more than just the textbook stuff. We want to get to the real Washington. And to do that, we got to start at the beginning. Born in Westmoreland County, Virginia, February 22nd, 1732. Not exactly a log cabin, but not a palace either. Eldest son, but his bond with his older half-brother Lawrence, that seems pretty crucial, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Lawrence was the one who had served with the British military, held a bigwig militia position in Virginia, total role model for young George, piqued his interest in all things military. I mean, that influence really can't be overstated.
Yeah, but then his dad dies in 1743. Education cut short. No fancy schooling in England like his brother Scott. So instead, it's math, surveying, becoming a top-notch draftsman, map maker. But here's a curveball. He spent hours as a young guy copying out these rules, over 100 of them, called the Rules of Civility and Decent Behavior in Company and Conversation. What's that about?
Well, think about it. Speak not evil of the absent, one of the rules. It's like, even back then, he's all about unity, keeping things cool, which is wild considering the political mess he'd eventually face. Foreshadowing, maybe?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so one trip abroad, 1751, Barbados. He goes with Lawrence, who's got tuberculosis, hoping for a miracle cure in the warm weather. No dice, sadly. But George, he catches smallpox, leaves some scars on his face, reminder of that journey. And then Lawrence dies in 52. George takes over Mount Vernon, at first leasing it, but inheriting it outright in 61. Big step up in the world, a proper Virginia planter now.
For sure. Mount Vernon was central to his life, not just economically, but that military drive. Still there, totally inspired by Lawrence's path, George wants in. He gets his chance. Lieutenant Governor Robert Dinwiddie appoints him major and district commander in the militia.
This is where things get interesting. French and Indian War, 1753, and George at 21 gets a huge assignment. Tell the French to scram from British land in the Ohio Valley. Talk about a high-stakes mission for a young guy.
No kidding. He's basically walking into a powder keg, gotta deliver this ultimatum, and play diplomat with the Iroquois Confederacy. Tough crowd, those guys. It was actually during this trip, meeting with the Iroquois leader, Tanacharison, that Washington gets a nickname. Conotocorius means devourer of villages. And get this, his great-grandfather had the same name. Talk about pressure to live up to.
Wow, lineage in action. Brutal winter, but he makes it, delivers the message. French, not impressed, refused to budge. But Washington's report, detailed, gutsy, gets published in Virginia and even makes it to London. People are taking notice.
Rip for courage, competence. He's on the map, literally and figuratively. And then 54, things get real fast. Promoted to lieutenant colonel, sent to deal with the French near, modern-day Pittsburgh. It's on.
Marching towards Fort Duquesne, and he finds out the French are already building it. May of that year, his men ambush a French scouting party. Their leader, Jumonville, gets killed. Still debated to this day, isn't it?
Oh yeah, huge controversy. French call it an assassination, claim Jumonville was a diplomat. Now, Washington doesn't speak French, and he signs this surrender document at Fort Necessity later. Turns out, it says he admitted to the assassination. He blames the translator, of course, but not a good look. And some historians say this whole Jumonville affair, it's what really sparked the wider war.
And that surrender at Fort Necessity, not exactly a highlight reel moment. Offered a captaincy in new regiment, but lower rank, nope, not having it. British had this rule, colonials couldn't outrank their officers, which was, insulting. So frustrated, Washington resigns.
Pride, huh? Gotta admire that. But his war experience isn't over. 1755, he volunteers. Aide-de-camp to General Braddock. Big expedition to take Fort Duquesne. Famous one, this.
Oh yeah, Braddock's blunder. Washington, even though he's sick with dysentery, he tells Braddock to split the forces. Easier to move through the wilderness. Braddock actually listens, but ambush at Monongahela. Disaster. Braddock dies, British get slaughtered, but Washington rallies the troops, covers the retreat. 2 horses shot out from under him, bullets flying everywhere. Somehow survives, and his reputation boosted. The guy's fearless.
Total badass, under fire, and he keeps his cool. Definitely a taste of the leadership he'd show later.
So, back to Colonel, Virginia Regiment, 1755. But the British, still a pain. Seniority issues, still no royal commission, which got to sting a bit. He's in the Forbes expedition, 58. They finally nabbed Fort Duquesne, but mostly because the French abandoned it. Washington, fed up, resigns again.
You know, all those setbacks, they actually were key. He learned to trust his gut, lead under pressure, saw how the British fought, their weak points. And that mess between colonial governments made him think hard about a strong central government, something he'd push for later.
Right, so 1759, he's 26. New chapter, marriage. Martha Dandridge Custis, a widow, 27, wealthy. They tie the knot January 6th. Seemed like a good match, loving, supportive. Set up shop at Mount Vernon, tobacco planting at first, then wheat later. Smart move.
And Martha comes with a lot of land, money. Washington's managing all that, plus his own holdings. He's one of the richest guys in Virginia now. Gives him clout, sets him up for bigger things, you know?
He's not done with land either. Remembers those grants from the war. He pushes for them, gets himself huge tracts in Ohio, Great Kanawha. Mount Vernon grows too, and the number of enslaved people on the estate more than doubles by the Revolution. He's a big deal now. Politically too. Elected to the Virginia House of Burgesses in 58, represents Frederick County for 7 years. At first, he's kind of quiet, but as the British start cracking down, he finds his voice.
Right.
Criticizes their taxes, those mercantilist policies that kept the colonies on a short leash, economically speaking.
Right, he's seeing it from both sides now. Planter and politician. And his own business is changing, too. Debt piles up, tobacco prices are all over the place. So between 64 and 66, what does he do? Switches Mount Vernon to mostly wheat, gets into milling flour, even tries hemp. The guy's adaptable, a hustler.
Oh yeah, he was no slouch. And as the British keep squeezing, Washington pushes back harder. Taxes without representations, forget it. Stamp Act, Townsend Acts, hates them. Then there's that Royal Proclamation of 1763, halting westward expansion, messing with land deals. He had skin in that game, so it was personal.
Then comes the hammer blow. The Coercive Act, 1774, British response to the Boston Tea Party. This is when things really shift for Washington. He sees it as an attack on colonial rights, period. He even drafts resolutions for Fairfax County, get this calling for an end to the slave trade. They actually pass it, too.
Wow, revolutionary fever's in the air, and Washington's right there. First Virginia Convention, delegate to the First Continental Congress. He's training militia, helping organize boycotts. By 75, when the shooting starts, everyone knows he's the guy to lead the army.
Second Continental Congress, June 75, they make the call Unified Continental Army. John Adams puts Washington's name forward. Experience plus a Virginian leading. Helps unite North and South. Unanimous vote. No-brainer.
And he does something kind of wild. Refuses a salary. Just expenses. The guy's all in. Problem is the army. A mess. Undisciplined, undersupplied. And they're up against, well, the British Army. David versus Goliath for real.
It's rough. Gotta turn farmers and shopkeepers into soldiers, fast, always short on guns, ammo, food. And at first, Washington's against black soldiers, free or enslaved. But the British, they're offering freedom to slaves who join them. So Washington changes course. By the end, lots of African Americans fighting for independence.
First big test, Siege of Boston, 1775-76. Washington shows up, sees the state of things. Yikes. Discipline, drills new tactics, he whips them into shape. Then, the masterstroke. Puts cannons on Dorchester Heights, overlooking the city. British, trapped. March 1776, they evacuate. Huge win for the Patriots. Morale booster, big time. Shows the Brits they're not invincible. But they're not done. Next stop, New York. 1776-77, the New York and New Jersey campaign. Brutal. Washington's right about the British landing spot, orders defenses built, but still. Long Island, they get clobbered. Retreat from Manhattan, rough stuff. Little story here. British try to open peace talks. Send a message addressed to George Washington, Esquire. He's like, nope, not reading that. Demands his military title be used. Shows you he's serious about this. Patriot cause is legit to him.
Standing his ground. He listens to his generals, though, about defending Fort Washington, even though he's got doubts. Bad call. Fort falls, tons of men and supplies lost. Then the retreat across New Jersey, his army shrinking, morale's in the dumps. Man, must felt like the end.
Lowest point for sure. But then, boom, late 76, early 77, Washington pulls off a series of moves that change everything. Crossing the Delaware, Christmas night, surprise attack on the Hessians at Trenton, then another win at Princeton against the British themselves. Out of nowhere, hope is back.
More than military wins. It's psychological. Washington's bold, takes risks when things are darkest. Brits are thrown off balance, Americans. Reinvigorated. More enlist, they believe again.
Philadelphia Campaign, 1777-78, that's tough. Losses at Brandywine and Germantown. British take Philly, and then Valley Forge. Just saying the name sends chills. Brutal winter. Disease, starvation, so many men die. Morale hits rock bottom. Some officers even plot to replace Washington, but he holds on, keeps the army from falling apart. You gotta wonder what kept them going, facing that kind of misery.
Belief in the cause, for sure, and faith in Washington. He's constantly writing to Congress, begging for supplies. His stubbornness is contagious. And then Baron von Steuben shows up, starts training him Prussian style. By the end of Valley Forge, they're a real army, tough, disciplined.
Early 1778, huge shift. France joins the fight, alliance signed. Battle of Monmouth that year, technically a draw, but it kind of shuts down major fighting up north. And Washington's right there in the thick of it, rallying his troops after some early missteps by his generals. Hands-on leader, even in the heat of battle.
And behind the scenes, Washington's got this whole spy network going. The Culper Ring, famous one, feeding him intel on the British. Then there's the Benedict Arnold thing. West Point, almost handed over to the enemy. Crazy betrayal. Washington, he's furious, personally takes charge of securing the fort. Shows how strategic he's thinking.
War moves south, but Washington's still calling the shots. Big picture stuff. 1781, work with the French, Rochambeau, Lafayette. They pull off this masterful march to Yorktown, Virginia. Siege of Yorktown, it's a trap. And Cornwallis, the British commander, he's done. Surrenders October 19th, 1781. Game over, basically.
Brilliant strategy, flawless execution. Washington working with the French, their combined forces, unstoppable. Peace treaty's still 2 years away, but Yorktown, that's the knockout blow.
Then comes the winding down. Army's got to go home, and Washington, in December 83, he resigns. Huge moment. Before that, there's the Newburgh conspiracy officers are pissed. They want their pay, their pensions. Things could have gone south fast. But Washington calms it down. Then he walks away from power. The world was stunned. Civilian control of the military, he set the example.
Saved the Republic right there. So many folks thought he'd become a king, basically. But nope, he goes back to Mount Vernon, a hero. The world's in awe of this guy.
Retirement doesn't last long. He sees those Articles of Confederation governing the country. Not good. Calls it a rope of sand. And he's right. Too weak, nation's vulnerable, everyone knows it.
This leads to the Constitutional Convention, 1787, Philly. At first, Washington's like, I'm good. Maybe doesn't want his reputation tangled up in that mess. But guys like Madison, Hamilton, they convince him he has to be there.
And bam, instant impact. Elected president of the convention, unanimously. He's all about the Virginia Plan, strong national government, the whole 9 yards. Lots of arguments break out, big states, small states, representation. Washington even gets frustrated behind closed doors. But he keeps them focused, pushes for compromise. And they get it done. The Constitution, it's a group effort, but Washington's the glue holding it together.
No doubt. And his backing. Huge in getting the states to actually ratify the thing. Then the first presidential election, 1789. Everyone knows it's his for the taking. Electoral College, unanimous. Only time that's ever happened.
Washington's kind of bummed, actually. He writes about feeling anxious, leaving Mount Vernon again. Duty calls, I guess. First inauguration, April 30th, 1789. New York City. Sets the bar high. Wants to be called Mr. President. No fancy titles, just plain and simple. Republican ideals, front and center.
First term, building the government from scratch, basically. Departments created state, war, Treasury picks smart guys to run them. Jefferson, Hamilton, Knox, the first cabinet. And the veto power. Uses it sparingly. Careful with that big stick.
Tries to stay above the political fray, but those factions are forming. Federalists around Hamilton, Democratic Republicans with Jefferson. Washington leans towards Hamilton's side, causes some friction. They pick the spot for the new capital city on the Potomac. Bill of Rights gets passed, but slavery, Native American relations, still big, messy issues. Oh, and he starts Thanksgiving. 1789, National Day of Prayer and Thanks. Got to give credit to God for the new nation.
He wants to retire after one term, but they talk him into running again, 1792. Wins, of course, unanimous again, second term. Foreign policy's the big headache. French Revolution, wars breaking out all over Europe. Washington's like, nope, not our problem. Proclamation of Neutrality, 1793, keeps America out of it, smart move, but some folks are mad, they want to help France. Then there's that French minister, Genet. What a character. Stirs up trouble, tries to drag us into the war.
Back home, the whiskey rebellion pops off. Western Pennsylvania, farmers mad about the tax on whiskey. Washington, he puts on his general's hat again, marches out with a huge militia force. Rebellion crushed, message sent. Northwest Indian War is still going on, but General Mad Anthony Wayne wins a big one at Fallen Timbers, 1794, opened up the West even more. Then there's that Jay Treaty with Britain.
Oh boy.
Treaty was supposed to smooth things over after the Revolution, get trade going again, but it pissed off a lot of people, seen as too pro-British. France is not happy.
No.
But hey, it kept the peace and trade boomed. Can't argue with that. Spain, though, they're cool. Treaty of San Lorenzo in 95 settles borders, gives Americans use of the Mississippi River. Big win, but by the end of the second term, cabinet's falling apart. Jefferson, Hamilton, they're both gone. Newspapers are attacking Washington left and right. Rough way to end things. Then comes the mic drop. Farewell address, 1796. This is a big one. He's all about national unity, warns about political parties tearing the country apart. Stay out of foreign entanglements, he says. And religion, morality, those are the foundations of a good republic. Powerful stuff, his vision for America laid out.
Textbook material right there. He goes back to Mount Vernon in 97, wants to chill, but he's still a Federalist at heart, and when things get tense with France again, quasi-war brewing, he steps up. Lieutenant General, Commander-in-Chief. Mostly lets Hamilton handle the day-to-day, though.
Managing Mount Vernon now, and it's not all smooth sailing. Everyone thinks he's loaded, but most of his wealth is tied up in land, enslaved people. He even starts making whiskey, trying to boost his income. Then, December 12, 1799, freezing rain. He's out inspecting his farms, catches a nasty cold. Throat swells up. Doctors come, they bleed him, give him all sorts of crazy treatments. Doesn't work. December 14th, he's gone. 'Tis well, he says at the end. What killed him? Hard to say. Epiglottitis, maybe, made worse by the cures they gave him.
Country mourns, the whole world really. Huge funeral at Mount Vernon. First, they bury him in the family vault, but some jerk tries to steal the body. So they move him, eventually put him in a fancy marble tomb. There's talk about bringing him to the new capital, D.C., but the South says no, he stays at Mount Vernon.
Slavery. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
And Harrison enslaved people young, his whole world built on it. But the revolution changes him, and switching to wheat farming, that plays a part too. He comes to oppose slavery, wants it gone legally, and his will says all his slaves are to be freed after Martha dies. Whoa. Not many Virginia planters did that, and he makes sure the young ones, the old and sick, they're taken care of. It's like he knew it was wrong, but couldn't quite break free in his own time.
Yeah, totally reflects the messed up situation back then. Liberty, equality, but built on slavery. Washington's struggle with it, it's America's struggle. He couldn't fix it all, but freeing his own slaves, that's saying something.
Religion, he was an Anglican, vestryman, all that. Prayed, read the Bible. But when he talks about God publicly, it's more Enlightenment stuff. Providence, the Almighty,
Yeah.
Believed in God, for sure. Saw his hand of the revolution, but never shoved it in your face. Religious freedom, big supporter. And he was a Freemason, all about reason, morality, brotherhood.
What was he like, personality-wise? Not the life of the party, that's for sure. Reserved, dignified, a bit stiff. Not a great speech maker, but one-on-one, he could be persuasive. Moderate in his habits, tall guy, taller than most back then. And those teeth, bad teeth all his life. Wore dentures, but not wooden ones, that's a myth. Great horseman, though. Years of riding around surveying, leading armies. He knew his way around a saddle.
So, where do we land on Washington's legacy? It's huge. Top tier of American figures, one of our best presidents, hands down. He becomes this global icon for freedom, republics, the whole deal. We celebrate his birthday, he's his general of the armies, even after he's gone.
But it's not all sunshine and roses, right? Early accounts paint him as this perfect hero, but today, we gotta be honest. Slavery, his treatment of Native Americans, those are stains on his record, no way around it.
Absolutely. His name's everywhere. Washington, D.C., the state of Washington, monuments, bridges. On our money, our stamps. Mount Vernon's a national treasure. His papers are at the Library of Congress. The guy's everywhere.
So, wrapping up, I think it's safe to say Washington's life was incredible. Leading the revolution, shaping the Constitution, setting the standard for presidents. He did it all.
And yeah, his story's messy, complicated. But that's kind of the point, right? To understand America, we got to understand him. His triumphs, his failures, it's all part of who we are.
Think about what he wrestled with. Building a nation out of thin air with all those competing interests. What does it mean to lead? What are the limits of power? How do you live up to your ideals when the world is, well, messy? We're still asking those questions today.
Great stuff. Hope you all enjoyed this deep dive.
Until next time, keep digging.